Hello and welcome to Shit I Wish Someone Told Me, a weekly series of educational conversations where my guests and I talk about all of the shit that we wish someone had told us at one point or another about life so that you don't have to figure it out the hard way. I'm your host, Johnna Renée, and I am an evidence-based life coach that specializes in teaching you the how-to when it comes to helping yourself. And I do that by helping you learn what works for you so that you can stop feeling like shit and start feeling good about who you are as you navigate this thing that we call life. And what you can expect in this episode is a conversation on self-discovery. And I'm also going to be explaining the content restructuring that's going to be happening from this point on, and also why I am going to be the one who is kicking off the first episode for the next few months by myself. So there's not going to be any guests for these first few episodes of the month. There will be guests for the other episodes later on. And I want to just make sure that I explain what you can expect if you're interested. If you are like, I am not interested and I do not care, cool. Head to the description, check out the timestamp for where I start talking about self-discovery, and we will see you back there. However, for the rest of us, it's story time, y'all. And so I want to make this as concise and as comprehensive as possible because we love a good use of time. Time efficiency is, I don't want to say my love language, but I do like it. I do like it. And so what you can expect for this intro, if you will, are for us to talk about four things. First of all, why I started Shit I Wish Someone Told Me. Second of all, why I'm restructuring. And third of all, what you can expect with this new format. And lastly, you get to get a little sneaky peeky of the episodes that are going to be coming up for this month. So let's dive right in and talk about why I started Shit I Wish Someone Told Me. So as I was on my own self-help and personal development journey, I would learn these things. And I kept finding myself asking, why did no one tell me this shit? And that happened a lot, right? And so it was something where as I kept finding myself asking these things, like asking like why no one told me this, that I acknowledged that, hey, like there's an opportunity here. Like what a difference it would make if more people just had access to this information. And as someone who, was in the practice of or the profession of coaching functional movement, I acknowledge that, hey, sometimes no matter how many cues I give you for a movement, it's not gonna click until you hear someone else say it or until you hear someone else say it in their own way. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to actually make this a conversation where I bring in people who are specialists within their own arenas. And also because while, yes, like this is some shit I wish someone told me, I always encourage you to do your own research, see what works for you, learn things on your own. And I felt that a conversation would be a good way to not only offer you the shit that I wish someone told me, but also the shit that, someone else, learned on their own. And so you can kind of get both perspectives in that way. And it's also something where I started doing this and having these conversations because, yeah, like let's share some shit. Let's, bring in people who are not just me to have these conversations, and let's do it in a way that, let's do it on the internet because, everything, like we have so much access to information at our fingertips. And so if you have been around for a while since the beginning, thank you. We started these conversations in March of 2021. And I want to make sure that I just pause for a minute. This is not on the itinerary, but I want to say thank you because had it not been for you listening and sharing the episodes and, rating the podcast and letting me know in person your feedback and, letting me know which episodes really landed with you and, what parts really stood out and made a difference in your life and, sliding into my DMs to have conversations about, the topics themselves and just to engage, then you would not be hearing my voice right here now. And so I want to say thank you for making this possible. And thank you for giving me the guidance and direction to say, and know, yeah, like keep on keeping on. And so I want to make time to say thank you for that. And if I have not done so in person, please forgive me. Know that I do appreciate you, and I would love to have the opportunity to say it in person. And so please do, let me know what your feedback is, or tag me when you share it, or, let me know, like, so I can see it so that I can personally thank you. Because again, like, you wouldn't be listening to me right now had it not been for those moments. So thank you. And with that, since we have been around for March, or since March of 2021, you know that this has been an evolution. So if you've been around, you've seen that. If you're new, hi, welcome. Glad you're here. And it's something that these conversations started on Instagram Live. Every Friday we would go live on Instagram, we'd have these conversations, and it was great. And it came to a point where I was like, love, right? Like, this is great. And also I'm like, it's a lot to cram in to one episode once a week, right? And so I created this new format that I feel serves better, where you will get the episode on a Monday. On Wednesday, you have the opportunity to ask any questions on the topic via my polls in my Instagram stories over at Hey Johnna Renée. And you can also give us your feedback on your personal experience on the topic. And then on Friday, we go live, we speak to your personal experience, we share the shit that you wish someone had told you about the topic, and we answer your questions so that we can really provide a value to you, right? So that we can really, help to give you some clarity on whatever it is that is happening for you, whatever your experience is on the topic. And one of the things that I always like to say, because I know oftentimes people can be a bit hesitant to ask questions, is that if you have a question, then someone else definitely has that same question. So always ask it, whatever it may be. And by doing so, you are helping others. And I mean, you're helping me fulfill what I want to do. And that is to, leave this place a little bit better than I found it. Because, big picture goal here. I want this to be something where, decades later, whenever I retire, I pass the torch on to someone else who's able to continue this work, who's able to continue these conversations and share the shit they wish someone would have told them. And so never said that out loud. So you heard it here first, y'all. But that's what you get for hanging around for story time. So thank you. And so, yeah, that's obviously in the future, but that is my ultimate vision and hope for this. So with all of that being said, that's why it started. That's, extra where I want it to go. But the reason that I am restructuring this content now, I really like the format that we've got going on, right? Like, I like the Monday episode availability, the Wednesday opportunity for you to ask questions after you've listened to it, have some time to marinate, and then the Friday interaction where you get to, show up live or watch the replay where we answer your questions and where we really speak to what's true for you within the topic. For the content itself, this is something else that I have encountered personally and that I see with pretty much everyone when they start to embark on their self-help personal development journey. It's like, there's so much, right? There's so much shit. Like, where do I start? Like, between the post that says, like, look at your childhood trauma, and, the reel that says, try this breath work. And then, you've got like a book saying, like, work on your relationships, and then a podcast saying, and your boundaries. And then, somewhere along the way, you see something that's like, and take cold showers, don't forget to meditate. Journaling is great. And it's just something where it's like, holy shit, like, okay, like, let me add all these things to the list. But the next thing you know, your list is a mile long, and you're like, this is overwhelming, right? This is overwhelming. And what do we do when things are overwhelming? Nothing. Our brains are like, if I don't do anything, then chances are pretty high that things will stay the exact same. And while the exact same may not be what I necessarily want, it is what I know. And so I'm just going to not do anything as a way to safeguard from that overwhelm, and from, having to figure out and like do all the things, and to just, not even know where to start and get frustrated and all that. So that's what happens whenever we are getting all these different, things telling us like where to focus. we just don't do anything. So it's essentially like the seed gets planted, but it doesn't get watered. Like no one puts any sun on it. Like the seed is planted, but it's just there. It's just there. Like nothing, no one's nurturing it. And so to support you with that not happening, not here, not with my guests, not with shit I wish someone told me, moving forward until further notice, we are going to be streamlining the content. So the format is going to stay the same. The content is going to be streamlined. And so what I mean by that is instead of having a conversation about boundaries one week and then relationships the next, and then about like accepting your reality, like a bit scattered, I will admit. So I saw an area of opportunity to make those a streamlined process for all of us so that each month the episodes will be about one of these 4 focuses that I'm going to share with you. And the reason that I'm doing this is because these are the 4 focuses, like I said, to streamline the content so that we can learn about, different aspects of one thing instead of different things in like various aspects, right? And so I'm choosing these 4 focuses because I have found that these are things that pretty much everyone struggles with, and we can provide solutions for those struggles that are comprehensive AF. And this is going to be something where you're actually going to get to, understand the focus before we move on to the next thing, so that we can make sure that you are moving forward in the momentum that you with the momentum in the direction that you want to go, and that you're not just like taking a bit here and taking a bit there and then going over there and like, oh, there's another bit, I like that part, like running all around. Like, I mean, that's no. So that's why I am streamlining, and that's why I chose these 4 focuses specifically, because out of all the things, out of all the stuff, we can bucket them in these 4 main focuses. And so those 4 focuses are self-discovery, evolution of the self, a life redesign, and your future focus formula. And so I want to explain a bit now about why I chose those 4 and go into depth about what they are. And when it comes to one of the main things that I see people struggle with, other than the overwhelm, is that a lot of us don't know who we really are. Really. Like, yes, we know who we're told we're quote unquote supposed to be. We know who we think we quote unquote should and shouldn't be, do and say. And we also know what labels we got, right? Like a job title or our familial, little title, such as a sister or a daughter. But beyond that, who are you? Like, we don't really necessarily always know who we are, because we are these versions of ourselves that we think that people want us to be, that we think is who we're supposed to, again, quote unquote, be. And that is why it is so important to talk about self-discovery in all of its many ways. And so that's why that's the first focus. The second focus is something that people from there often struggle with. And that is accepting the evolution that is you. Either people feel shameful about their past, or resentful about their present, or apprehensive about their future. They, quote unquote, should or shouldn't have done something, or they, should or shouldn't be further along, or they should be further along, excuse me. And we doubt like the decisions that we made in the past and like the things that got us here, because here isn't always where we necessarily want to be. And again, there's that future apprehension that we have, or apprehension about what may or may not be in the future, and how to make the decisions that are going to get us where we want to go, right? And so it's something where we spend so much time getting caught in that loop of just not being satisfied, that we don't pause to accept the fact that this evolution is part of the human experience, and it's all just R&D. And so that is why the evolution component is another focus that we are going to be focusing on here on Shit I Wish Someone Told Me. Furthermore, and this might be something that is a bit difficult to hear, so hold on to your butts, hold on to your whatever you need, take a breath. I'm saying this with love, bringing this to your awareness, because it's some shit that I wish someone would have pointed out to me. A lot of us are living lives that we don't really like. And when it comes to designing a life on your terms, It's something that most of us, once again, do because it's something that we were told we quote unquote should do, or we should want to have, or that this is good for us. And I'm not saying don't, take people's advice. Like if someone has some wisdom and some knowledge to share, cool, listen to it. That's what I'm doing right here, right now, right? But I'm saying don't let their idea of what life should be and what they want their life to be the thing that you adopt to be yours just automatically. I am wanting to make sure that we talk about this life redesign because it's something where we don't oftentimes think, do I actually like this life? Or is this just what I was told I was supposed to do? Like, the car and the house and like the 2.5 kids and like all that. And so no one ever told us like, hey, like, what do you actually want? Right. And I mean, I will share stories about this. I remember personally, so sidebar, main bar. Um, I was looking for a job when I had just moved to Florida, and I met someone who, was like, oh, well, they know a lot of people, like they can connect you to someone. And I remember them asking me, what do you want to do? And I went into like rattling off this list of like, oh, well, here's, what I've done and my experience. And, I went to college and my degree and blah, blah, blah. And they stopped me and they said, no, no, but what do you want to do? And I remember just thinking, huh, what do I want to do? And it was something that no one had ever really asked me, right? Like no one said like you should do this, but it was something where no one had ever asked like in those words, like what do I want to do? And so that's why I'm here sharing this shit with you, because it's something that I think has happened for so many of us. Like it's not just a me thing. Like I've seen this happen with like other people as well. And so that's why we are having this conversation about a life redesign, creating a life on your own terms, which we've done an episode about already, by the way. I'll link that in the description as well if you want to check that out. But that's why we are focusing on this as one of our focuses, because we aren't taught, number one, to consider what we want our lives to look like oftentimes. And number two, if we are, there's like a misconception about it. And number three, we aren't told or shown how to leverage our experience, our evolution, what we know about ourselves to actually create the life that we want. And when it comes to, like I mentioned in number two, the misconception about what it means to create a life on your own terms, I think that what we have seen now as well in the popular culture, if you will, are these, notions of like manifestation, right? Like just, make a vision board and, say these affirmations and create the life that you want. And while those are helpful, I'm not throwing any shade. There's so much more that goes into it. And so I think that it's important to have that conversation and to really shine a light on what it means to create a life on your own terms and to do a life redesign after you know who it is that you are and after you've accepted that, hey, like this is all just R&D and this is a process. So that's why we're talking about that focus. And then the final focus that we're going to be talking on, your future focus formula, is because one of the things that I have heard from so many people is that once they start to do this self-help personal development work, it's something where the momentum wears off, right? And it's something where like that can happen for multiple reasons, either because it's like, oh, it's just, I can't keep up with it, or, oh, well, it's too easy, I can do it at any time, or, just it's like, well, this isn't really working for me, right? Like I'm just not going to do it. So it's something where it's important that you figure out what your future focus formula is to keep you moving forward. Once you know what direction that is, right? Once you know where you want to start going, because you can like haul ass in a direction only to get there and realize, oh, wait, this isn't even what I wanted to do, kind of a thing. And so we talk about ways to navigate that, and making sure that that doesn't happen to you. Not saying that it won't, but saying that like there are things that you can do, like reflection, to make sure that checkpoint, like, yeah, like this is still the direction I want to go. Yes, but like let's tweak it a little bit. Like let's pivot just a bit. And so that's why we're focusing on your future focus formula. And also, this is a key thing that I love to talk about. Oftentimes we are, when we're thinking about maintaining forward momentum and restructuring like our processes and things like that, we take practical solutions and try to apply them for adaptive behaviors. And so you want to make sure that like you're not doing that when it comes to looking at something that's going to keep you moving forward, right? So what I mean by that is, let's say that you are a procrastinator. Hi, my name is Johnna. I'm a procrastinator. And this is a problem for me when it comes to meeting buy-wins and even showing up on time. But it is also a solution for me. For example, avoiding the overwhelm of having to do a project, or prolonging the time between like when I have to see this person that I don't really want to see, right? And so in those ways, it's a solution, or it's keeping me from, spending more time in a job that I hate, let's say. Solution. And so if you just do some practical things like setting an alert in your calendar, setting some alarms on your phone, then you are applying a practical solution for an adaptive behavior. And so, yeah, it might work for a little while, but at the same time, it likely won't work for the long haul, because you're not doing it because you want to be late. You're doing it because it's protecting you. It's meeting some need. It's serving you in some way. And so figuring out what your future focus formula is, what these things are that you need in order to move forward, are really going to support you with that momentum, right? And actually maintaining that momentum. And so that's just one example of the many things that we're going to be talking about in that sense. So that, my friends, is what you can expect in terms of the content and how it's going to be structured from here until further notice. And so what's going to happen is that each month, like I said, all the episodes are going to be about one of those focuses in that order. So September 2022, we're going to be all about self-discovery. Next month, evolution. Next month, life redesign. December, we're going to be talking about figuring out your future focus formula. And then in January, we're going to take it from the top back to self-discovery. Important to note, all of the episodes will be different. So this is not us just talking about the same things every 4 months. This is only an intro to that right here and right now. And so, like I mentioned, the first episode of each month is going to be an intro into that specific focus, but this is going to be the only intro to self-discovery episode that's going to happen, unless we're talking like way in the future when we need to do like a 2.0 version or something like that. So with all of that being said, let me give you a little sneaky peeky into what you can expect for this month, and then we're going to dive on into our conversation for today. So for this month, all about self-discovery. And in this episode, we're going to be laying the groundwork for self-discovery, which I'll talk about a bit more in just a second. And in the upcoming episodes this month, you are going to be able to learn about creating a healthy relationship with yourself, how to create and uphold boundaries with yourself, and also the value in knowing the ways in which you work best in work environments, whether you are an entrepreneur or someone who works by yourself, or whether you're in a team organization. And so those are the things that you can expect. That's why I started Shit I Wish Someone Told Me. That's why I'm restructuring the content. That is what this restructuring is going to look like. And that is what you can expect for the conversations that are going to be coming up this month. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about self-discovery. So this is a foundational episode, just like Boundaries 101, which plug for episode 53. I will also link that in the description below. And what we're going to be covering in this episode is, first of all, what self-discovery even is. Secondly, why it's so important. And third, how to start discovering who it is that you actually are. Today's episode is for you if you are someone who is on the journey of self-discovery. And spoiler alert, if you have a growth mindset and you're continuously looking to deepen your understanding of yourself and of others, that's you. So hello and welcome. Glad that you are here. And my goal today is to inspire you to leverage the power of curiosity, right? To really start to ask yourself, who am I and why? And to give you some tangible takeaways that you can use to help yourself start to discover more about who you are and why you are that way. What are the things that make you you? And as you listen, I invite you to ask yourself these 4 questions. First, what makes you you? Second, who are you when no one is looking? Third, who are you when everyone is looking? And fourth, how would discovering more about who you are improve your quality of life? So now that that seed has been planted, let's water it, shall we? So The way that I kick off every episode is by asking my guests what is some shit that they wish someone told them about the said topic. And so I am going to kick off this episode by sharing some shit that I wish someone had told me about self-discovery. And spoiler alert, I already alluded to it in the intro. And I wish that someone would have simply told me what self-discovery is and why it is so important, and then how to actually do it, which is exactly what we're going to be covering in this conversation today. So let's start with what it is. Self-discovery is knowing who you are beyond the labels, right? Beyond the job titles, beyond the I'm a daughter, I'm a partner, I'm a wife, like whatever the case may be. Self-discovery is something that is constantly changing, the evolutionary component, right? If you're not changing or evolving, then like you ain't here no more. And so self-discovery is, acknowledging that this is a process, right? Like it's not just something that like a one and done, like, oh, figured it out. Like you are constantly evolving, changing, and growing. And so that's, why we're focusing on that as another focus, the evolutionary part of it. But self-discovery is approaching situations and people as opportunities where you get to learn more about yourself, and as a byproduct, you get to learn more about others. And so I'll talk about, what that looks like here in just a second. We oftentimes make things about the other people, right? Whenever it comes to situations like, oh, well, what if they don't like me? And I can't believe that they just said that, right? But we're all just living our own lives. And while, yes, community is important, community is needed before you are able to experience feelings of self-esteem and self-actualization. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you need to experience feelings of love and belonging. That's not it'd be nice to have, like, sure, like I'll order a couple of those. Like you need to experience feelings of love and belonging before you can reach these other levels of self, like I said, confidence, self-esteem, and self-actualization. And so with that, community is very important, but so is making sure that you find the right community. And so we will talk more about community and relationships as we develop some of the future episodes. But for now, I would just want to point out that self-discovery really is an important part of that communal aspect, because the more that you know about yourself, the more that you're going to be able to open yourself up for these opportunities for you to connect with others. And so when it comes to why is self-discovery important, like why should you even care? In short, it helps you live a more meaningful and fulfilled life. When we have these concerns of, not waking up with drive or purpose, when we have these feelings of insecurity, when we experience self-doubt, low self-esteem, low confidence, anxiety, and just not feeling good, but not really knowing why, out of all of the things that could be playing and are likely playing part in that, chances are that we can trace that thread back to not knowing who you are, which is why self-discovery is so important. But the problem that we have when it comes to self-discovery is that we all have heard people say, well, just do you, right? But no one ever explained what that means or how to actually do it. And as a result, so many people don't actually know who it is that they are, right? We're just walking around as these versions of ourselves that we've, become and morphed into because we think that that's what those around us or our society want us to be, right? We're seeking that love and belonging. And so when you have this opportunity to experience self-discovery, when you look into that curiosity, it's something where you're able to open yourself up to, other opportunities. And so the reason that, not knowing who you are is such a problem is because we have a lot of unfulfilled anxious people when that happens. This is why people have midlife crises. This is why people care so much about what others think of them, because we don't even know what we think of ourselves. And when we are in a place where we can look at who it is that we are able to recognize parts of ourselves within others, and we're able to connect with others. Like, right, it's a very important thing, being able to understand and accept who it is that you are. And so when it comes to figuring out what the solution is for that and knowing who we are and actually starting to do this self-discovery work, because I think I don't want to spend too much time explaining like why it's important. Like I feel that I've hit on some good points with that. And the solution here, how do we actually do it? I want to start going into that and giving you some tangible things that you can do. But I want to preface with two things. So first of all, have your self-regulation toolkit ready. And number two, think of this as a journey. So whenever you are with your self-regulation toolkit, what I mean is whenever you are doing this work, it can be uncomfortable, especially if you've never done it before, right? And so instead of finding yourself in an agitated state where you're like, oh God, like this personal development, self-help, like it's just uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. Like, I don't want to do it. Like, let me just not do it. It makes me feel bad. Like it makes me uncomfortable. What I suggest that you do before you start this, which is actually also, spoiler, part of self-discovery, is to start to notice the ways in which you become agitated. Start to notice what sensations you feel in your body when you start to become agitated. Do you start to get sweaty? Do you start to feel that uncomfortable discomfort and the feeling of like in the pit of your tummy? Do you start to, have shortness of breath? Does your heart start to increase, like your heart rate? Like, what are these things that tell you that, like, oh, I'm becoming agitated? Write them down. Okay. And then from there, I want you to consider what things you need in those moments to regulate your nervous system, to bring you back to equilibrium. What are the things that you need to do so that you can get back to your baseline in that way? What are the things that you can do to calm down? And this might look like grounding techniques. This might look like box breathing. This might look like going for a walk outside. This might look like phoning a friend. This might look like naming objects in the room. This might look like doing some yoga or going for, I already said a walk, but doing some other form of movement. Like it's going to be different for everyone. You can take different things from people who offer this type of insight. You can Google it. I have also done a video on self regulation as well. Well, on self-discovery, but I speak about your self-regulation toolkit. And so I really encourage you to do that first and foremost. That is step one, right? So think about the things, because you probably already know, like, these are some things that make me feel that tell me that I'm becoming agitated. Like you probably already know. So think of those things and start to make that list. And then from there, like I said, start to make a list of not just one, like, oh, when I start to feel that feeling in the pit of my tummy, I go for a walk. Great. And what else? Right? Because the things that work now might not work tomorrow. So make sure that you have like your go-to. So if I start to feel that feeling in the pit of my tummy, I go for a walk, it's not working. Then what do I do? Do I listen to music? Do I, start to bring my neocortex back online by playing a brain game? Let me explain that really quick. Sidebar. So whenever you are in an agitated state, that is your emotional brain, that is your response, right? Your emotional response is going to be your quickest response. And when you are, able to, we as humans are able to bring our neocortex back online. But in order to do that, because all the blood is now in that response, right? Like all that part of our brain, what you need to do is activate the logical thinking part of your brain. And so whenever you do that, you can play a brain game, you can start to recall facts, you can read a book, you can start to do things that are going to activate that part of your brain, right? That's why identifying objects in the room oftentimes help people to feel more grounded, because you're bringing that logical part of your brain back online. So if that's something, going back on track here, if that's something that works or that you want to add to your toolkit, cool. So just know what these things are, and don't just stop if you're like, I'll play a brain game. What brain game? Download the app now. Like, know what your go-to is, right? And I suggest that you keep this list in your notes on your phone or somewhere handy, like somewhere in a Google Doc, like somewhere where you can access it at all times so that you can always add to it or edit it. The next part of this would be to also consider what it is that is causing you to feel agitated. So if you are learning about boundaries, are you all hunky-dory until you get to the part where you talk about boundaries with, romantic relationships? Like, is it the work boundaries that start to make you feel some kind of a way? Because what you'll notice is you start to track this, right? Evidence-based, is you will be able to identify themes. Hopefully, most likely, you may be able to identify themes. And so it's something where you can start to pinpoint things, right? Because oftentimes whenever we are experiencing these concerns, anxiety, it's something where it's like, it's overwhelming. It's like, I don't know where it's coming from. It seems like it's coming from everything. So whenever you start to keep this list of what's triggering what, what's causing you to become agitated, you can start to get an understanding of, oh, well, it's work. Oh, well, it's family, or whatever the case may be. So that is step number 1, your self-regulation toolkit. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200 until you have done that. Step number 2 is an invitation for you to think of this as a journey. I mentioned this earlier. Self-discovery is something that's never going to be done. You're always going to be doing it. The work, quote unquote, is something that's never going to be done. And so just make peace with that. Just accept, acknowledge it is what it is. This is part of the human experience. And so, while we can go 90 miles an hour down the highway, it's something where, like, what's the point? Like, we're jeopardizing ourselves or jeopardizing others. Like, it's something where it's like, there are times like, let's speed up, let's slow down, but like, don't try to, make this something where you're like, I've got to get it done. Like, I want to get it done. Like, I want to get to the destination so I can rest. Like, slow and steady, the tortoise and the hare. Like, just take your time, and approach it as a journey. So those are the 2 considerations that I want to have there. Now, when it comes to those steps that I mentioned, so the steps, those tangible takeaways, well, we've already given you one. And so the self-regulation toolkit is key. And that is also part of self-discovery, because you're learning about what your triggers are. You're learning about what agitates you. You're learning about what worked. You're recognizing themes, right? So already you're doing the self-discovery work with that step 1. The other thing that I want to mention here is to establish your baseline. One of the reasons that this personal development and self-help wears off, or people don't find it effective, is because we don't have a way to see if it's working, right? If you are on a movement journey and you're looking to, do something within that capacity, then I can tell I ran a mile faster this month than I did 3 months ago, right? I can tell that the number on the scale is changing. I can tell that the weights that I put on the bar are changing. But I can't necessarily do that when I am in the work of personal help or personal development, and self-help, right? Like, it's not as tangible. And so what I invite you to do is to establish your baseline. So what are the things that we want to get a metric on, right? Do you want to recognize how satisfied you are with life? That's usually a good place to start. How happy you are on the regular, and how confident you are. Like, what are the things that you want to get a measure on? This is something that I work with my clients. And if you are interested in getting a tracker, then let me know. I'm happy to set you up with that. Or if you want, you can create your own. I use a Google Doc, but I have the days of the week, and I use a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being worst case scenario, 10 being best case scenario, 5 being indifferent. And so each day, Monday through Sunday, going in and putting in your rating on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, how, happy am I today? How satisfied am I today? And just putting in the number just takes 10 seconds. Put in the number, so that at the end of the week, there is a cell that will average what your total is for your satisfaction, for your confidence, for your happiness. And so what happens is that over time, you can see, like, oh, this week, my happiness was a 5, let's say. Let's just use that as an example. And next week, it's a 5.5. Okay, well, that's progress. So that way you can actually see, like, what your baseline was, right? And then you can see, like, what and how it changes. So that's how you make it tangible. That's how you make it evidence-based. And it's easier to do it within this way, or with this, using this tool, than it is to just consider, like, oh, it's a 5 today. And then, fast forward to 3 months later, and you're like, I think it's a 4, maybe. Like, it's so much more valuable to have this day to day. Like, it took me like a second to enter in a number in a spreadsheet, and so I can see my totals there. Because what could have happened, if you are, let's say, asked today what your happiness is, like, just think of a number today, like, go ahead, just do it with me, just think of a number and actually comment or slide it into my DMs. Let me know. Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being worst case scenario, 10 being best case scenario, 5 being indifferent. How happy are you right here, right now? And so with that number, we have it now. fast forward to 3 months, I ask again. And depending on if you've gotten a lot of sleep that week, depending on if you've just gotten promotion at work, if you've just gotten fired, it might make a huge difference in the number that you report in 3 months, right? But we don't know what happened in between. And so whenever you have this tracker, whenever you have this, baseline established of like the average, from week to week, from day to day, then you're able to say like, oh, well, it was a 5 today, but then, in 3 months, it was let's say a 7, you know, what happened in between, right? Instead of doing that self-assessment, like it could just be 7 because like I got a promotion, like I'm feeling good. But in reality, if I look back at my tracker, it might be something where I'm like, oh, well, actually, it's not that. Actually, it's a 4, let's say. Like actually, the past, few months have been really challenging or whatever the case may be. And like granted, we wanted to go up, right? We wanted to go up, but I'm just saying like for the purposes of our story, it's something where it's important to make sure that you have that data, make sure that you have that evidence so that you can look back, because the tracker that I work with and use with my clients not only asks that you input your number, your scale of 1 to 10, but also making some notes and considering like what happened that day. So we can again start to notice themes. See. So does that sound familiar? Like we did whenever you are noticing if you are agitated or not. So you can start to notice themes. Oh, well, my happiness, let's say I'm filling out my tracker. It was a 3 today. It was a really shitty day at work. Oh, well, my happiness was an 8 today. I had an awesome, dinner with my family. See what I'm saying? You can start to, then because your average from 3 to 8, I'm not a mathematician, but it's going to be something in between there. So like a 4, like a 3.5, whatever, just as an example. And so that's not very high, but you can start to see what makes it really low, and you can start to see what makes it really high, so that you can start to create boundaries in those places where it's really low, so that you can start to, make more time to spend with your family. Like, see what I'm saying here? You're picking up what I'm dropping. So I highly recommend looking into self-discovery with obviously identifying what your agitations are, and thinking of it as a journey, and then also establishing your baseline. Where are you right here, right now? What are the things you want to get a metric on? And, is that satisfaction with life? That could be it. You don't have to do all 3 of them. You can make it something else, but just think about what that metric is and get some documentation for it so that you can create an average, so that you can see what that number is over time, so that you can actually have something that is a tangible thing you can look at, and making sure that you make some notes about why that is true. So the next thing that I want to suggest here is to just become aware of your beliefs and your worldviews. Like I mentioned earlier, the toxicity of should and shouldn't. So what are the things that you think that you should and shouldn't be doing, or have, or say, or look like, or wear, or whatever the case may be? Just become aware of that. And again, write it down, put it somewhere, put it all in like one place. Make sure that you know like what these things are, so that you can start to see over time, like, oh, well, I think this about my appearance. I think this is what success looks like to me. I think this is, what it means to be in a relationship. I think that, this is, the things that I quote unquote should say in this type of an environment, like whatever. Just notice what these things are. Notice what these shoulds and shouldn'ts are. Because the way that I like to think about this is you have a script playing in your head. And it's something where I like to relate this back to like Friends. Like we've all, probably most of us, have seen many, many episodes of Friends. And even though we haven't seen them in a long time, it's something where if I were to say, hey, let's, come over, would you like to do dinner tonight? Like, let's come over, like we'll watch some TV afterwards, whatever. You'll come over, we'll have dinner, it'll be great. And then we'll go to watch some television. And if a Friends episode comes on, even if you haven't seen it in years, chances are you will most likely be able to recite the line, the tone, and the timing, and all that stuff of your favorite episode, right? And so I want you to think about the things that you were saying inside of your head is like the same. There are these beliefs and there are these worldviews that have been in there forever, right? That we know by heart, but that we might not necessarily be present to the fact that like they're there, right? We might not necessarily think about them until the TV show comes on, until we see something that reminds us of that thing, right? Until it's triggered, if you will. And so when those things happen, I want you to make a note of that and acknowledge and document that belief or that worldview or that thought or whatever that thing is, that script, if you will. And then the third thing to start to learn more about yourself is just to give yourself grace and to really allow yourself to accept you as you are, come as you are, right? Don't judge what comes up. Just accept, like, hey, this is part of what has made me who I am. And so that's something that is just, that's not really a tangible one, but that is something that is important when it comes to doing the self-discovery work. So that is what I have for you. The tangible takeaways are to think about your self-regulation toolkit, have that ready, right? Get your evidence. And then from there, also to establish your baseline and become aware of your beliefs and worldviews by writing those down so you can start to do something with them. And then the not so tangible things that I offered are to think of this as a journey and to learn how to accept yourself, which is a practice. So just give yourself that grace and know that it likely won't happen overnight, but it is a practice and it can happen over time. So that's what I have for you. And at the beginning of this conversation, just want to take a little throwback. I asked you to consider what makes you you, who you are when no one's looking, and who you are when everyone is, and how discovering more about who you are would improve your quality of life. And if you don't have the answers to those questions right now, that's okay. All right. This is a process, like I said, but the seeds have been planted. Your reticular activating system has been activated, and we're going to be watering it and giving it sunlight and nurturing it and talking to that seed as long as I am continuing to have these conversations. And so with that, my hope is that that seed will start to grow. And within that, you'll start discovering more about who you are. So that's what I have for you for this week. And as you can tell by now, self-discovery is important AF. And as I mentioned, this is why it is the first pillar or the first focus, if you will, for these conversations for Shit I Wish Someone Told Me. And it is also the first pillar in my proven self system that I use with clients to make self-help actually help in the program that I teach. And so if you are someone whose curiosity was piqued today, then I feel you. And I have a free training for you that will help you start to discover more about who you are. And it comes complete with a workbook that guides you through this framework so that you can customize what you're learning and make your own self system that works for you. And you can also share that workbook with me so that I can guide you through that and comment back and forth. It's in a Google Doc to really support you in making this work once and for all. And so if you are like, I need to get in on that, highly recommend you do. Go ahead, head to the description for the link, or you can just visit whenselfhelpisn'thelping.com and take advantage of that. And that's just all spelled out one word, whenselfhelpisn'thelping.com. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being here. If this episode was at all helpful to you, please do share it with someone else that would benefit from learning more about self-discovery, why it's important, what it is, and how to do it. And of course, on Wednesday of this week, please do make sure to head on over to Instagram at Hey Johnna Renée. Check out my stories where I will be asking you questions about your experience with with self-discovery. And I will also give you the opportunity to ask me any and all questions that I will be answering on Friday at the after party, which is going to be going down at 5 p.m. Eastern, where I will share the results and also, answer all your questions. So until then, be sure to subscribe. Make sure to share this. Like I said, if you would please, I would greatly appreciate you helping me spread the word about some shit that I wish someone would have told me, and continue the conversation in the comments. So until then, I'll see you on the screen. Bye.